I went to historically black university in the DC, Maryland area. Well, okay, I like that. And around that time, I was dating a guy named Mike who had a best friend also named Mike. After that, I went to work with this legend known as the nightclub impresario, a guy named Mark Barnes in the DC area, where I learned so much about how to deliver exceptional customer service. A little bit later, I worked for a guy you might be familiar with, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Brother Love Combs. It may depend on what time of day it is. Call him what you like, just don't call him late for dinner. And then after that, today, currently, I serve as the CEO of Lobos 1707, where I'm proud to work alongside our founder, Diego Osorio, and the legend, LeBron James.
Hi, my name is Erin Harris, and I also went to a historically black college in the DC and Baltimore area. I also dated a guy named Mike who had a best friend named Mike, but I ended up marrying my Mike. From there, I went to go work for Mark Barnes, who was the guru of hospitality in Washington, D.C. He taught me everything that I knew about customer service. And then next, I worked for Sean Diddy Combs, AKA Diddy, Puff Daddy, Brother Love. I guess that depends on the era you grew up in. And now I'm the Chief Brand Officer for Lobos 1707 Tequila with the amazing Dia Simms, Diego Osorio, and King James. Now, do those stories seem the same, or at least similar? Maybe even parallel paths. Well, that's because they are, except for my path is 4 years, 7 months, 10 days, and 32 seconds behind Dia's. So you can call me the younger, more modern version, maybe.
Oh, that's a little spicy. Like, I don't think you practiced that part.
No, I'm just joking. But sometimes what's old is new. And we both believe this to be true. And essentially, what we know is that what's happened in the past is the pre-imagined. And many times when you're looking for answers to things, they've already been found. And so they may be hidden in plain sight. So like, let's say your history books or the archives, or even in the stories that your grandparents told.
Yeah, stories like, there's a movie called Hidden Figures. If you've never seen it, check it out. But it spotlights this group of amazing black women and all this untapped talent that was at NASA. Right, so this takes place in the 1960s, and there's a fierce kind of rivalry going on between was then the Soviet Union and America for the space race. And you had some of the most brilliant minds in America all amassed working to determine a novel, a brand new mathematical solution in order to figure out how to computate getting a manned capsule into space. So everybody's trying to figure out what's the new thing, what's the fresh, what's innovative. And one of those women, the brilliant mathematician Katherine Johnson, she instead went down the basement, dusted off some old math books, and actually looked backwards. She pre-imagined. And out of those books, she found a tried and true mathematical computation called the Euler's method. I don't know if I have any math heads in the house. No? Okay. From the 1700s. And that ended up being the linchpin which actually unlocked America's future and catapulted us forward in the space race.
So hear us out. If what happened in the past is the pre-imagined and those things are amplified or even brought to life, it actually has a powerful impact. And it's not just on people. It's on places, on systems, on things, on industries, and even in the communities that we live in today.
I've always been really interested in what drives community. Back, as I mentioned earlier, when I was studying to get my psychology degree, I had a big paper due, right? A big research paper. And I decided to look at the relationship between city planning and societal outputs. How does the size of your lawn, the composition of your block, the race of your neighbor, how does that impact your wealth as a community, your health as a community, your happiness metrics? And during my research, I stumbled across this community called Columbia, Maryland. Now, I didn't know at the time, I was in college, but later on, I would eventually meet a wonderful guy named Keith, actually in Florida randomly, who grew up in Columbia, Maryland. My future work wife, Erin, also grew up about 12 miles outside of Columbia, Maryland. I was just trying to get an A at that point, but I would find out that this unique and special town would have an outsized influence on my life, kind of both personally and professionally. And what made this town so special is the real estate developer, a gentleman by the name of James W. Rouse, who had normally employed all the normal tactics you do when you are developing a community and making sure you're focused on engineering and economics, had a revolutionary concept. He was like, you know what, I think that if you put the right rigor and discipline, the way you plan for a city, that you can actually cultivate higher levels of cultural and racial harmony.
So he believed that cities could be better. He believed that we could be better. And remember, this was a time where there were dramatic racial tensions. So you had blacks and whites couldn't drink out of the same water fountain. They couldn't use the same restrooms. Literally, police dogs and fire hose were used during peaceful protests. And black families had a very difficult time buying houses, let alone be a part of a community like this. But James was onto something. And he didn't realize it then, but by pre-imagining the approach to city planning, he actually uncracked and found a way to approach diversity, equity, and inclusion in the community itself.
Yeah, and that still lives on today. I actually grew up right here in New York, but I live now 2 miles away from Columbia, Maryland. So I have a front row seat to what happened. Did it work, right? This was over a century ago. And I'll tell you, just as recently in 2021, Columbia, Maryland's on a hot streak, 4 years straight cited as the safest community in America. Over 50% of the families in Columbia, Maryland earn at least 6 figures or better, right? The schools in Columbia, Maryland are some of the best in the nation. And to the credit of the dream of James W. Rouse, today Columbia, Maryland is actually even more diverse than ever.
So I actually need to know why James didn't talk to the people in DC, because I grew up on Bates Street, and none of those things are true about that community today. You know? Seriously, what if every developer had this foresight? What if everybody took this approach? The concept was simple and very powerful, and it stood on 4 pillars. The first was equity. The second was self-sustaining. The third was intentional design. And then the fourth, my favorite, was focusing on the product. And like the young kids say, like getting to the bag, yeah.
Yes, getting a little money. That's
like that.
That's what I heard what the kids say, I don't know. But, and why do we care, right? Why does this matter? I think, again, to the point around pre-imagining, when we look at the results of Columbia, right, and we all, particularly hour by hour when you turn on the news, grapple with how do we build a future that is filled with, with prosperity and with happiness. We have a living proof of performance, right, in this city, Columbia, Maryland, that we can draw from in the way that we build our communities and the way that we build industries.
So if you think about communities and individuals, everybody has good intentions. But in order to create meaningful impact, it has to be a shift in the total economic system. A lot of DEI efforts may fall short or miss the mark, many times because those initiatives have dispersed and disconnected messages and missions. So every aspect of an industry must work together simultaneously on one cohesive goal, which is equity and ownership. And that's the only way it's gonna work.
Equity, ownership, representation, these are things that we know firsthand. Just as recently as, a couple weeks ago, we find ourselves to be the only women and the only minorities in any boardroom that we go in. I've been working for, over 20 years, and that hasn't changed, or I guess 16 years for Erin.
Wait a minute, you're missing 7 months, 10 days, and 30 seconds. Round it up.
And the truth is, we've been fortunate to build incredible businesses. We built a brand called CîROC Vodka, which was a small brand at one point, and we built it to be a multi-billion-dollar brand. We're now on that same trajectory, building a brand called Lobos 1707, minority-led brand, and we're excited to be a part of. But the things that we've learned from those experiences have informed our approach now in building an entity called Pronghorn, right, which is a template on how to effectively diversify any industry. And we're starting with the Black community, and we're starting with the spirits industry.
Yeah, and then the first pillar is equity.
So the thing about when you're approaching equity, right, it can be pretty simple, right? We're inspired by the mathematician Katherine Johnson. Just simply do the math, right? So we looked at the industry at large, and we looked at how do we get to pro rata representation of the Black community in this industry. Now, on one side of the bar, you see 12 to 14% of consumption. That's about right. Black people make about 12 to 14% of this country. On the other side of the bar, though, you see a dramatic gap, less than 2% at executive levels, less than 1% of founders receive funding. So if you're trying to start your own gin or whiskey as a Black American, there's very little access to capital. Now, to be clear, this is not about spirits, right? This is about the right model for driving equity in a way that is heart-led but math-based.
So the second pillar is self-sustaining. So the question here is, how do we provide the tools and empower communities to flourish for years to come, the long term? And we know we can't put a Band-Aid on it because that's only a short-term fix for a deep-rooted, long-term issue. And so with Pronghorn, we did just that. We're investing in not only 57 Black-owned spirits brands, we're supporting 100 founders in the Black community. And we're not just giving them money or financial aid, we're also giving them superpower and supercharging services, if you will. And so you're like, what is that? Superpower, supercharging, what is that? Well, that's a collection of resources, access, people, a network, and things that will help this business flourish for years to come as they continue to build their business out.
And the third point is intentional design. It's really critical that we don't confuse good intention with the engineering that is required for intentional design. For this particular initiative, we're really thoughtful about what happens at every stage of the ecosystem in the spirits industry, from the distribution piece of it all the way to regulatory impact, and ensure that the way Pronghorn is built is to meet the needs of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs throughout and up and down the system.
Okay, and the fourth, like I told you, is my favorite. It's about making money. Money, 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 money. No, but the best commercial for DEI success is commercial success. So when we set out to diversify the spirits industry, we knew that goodwill just wouldn't be enough, right? So we set a target goal to achieve and drive $2.4 billion of economic impact into the spirits industry and into the Black community. And so we know that diversity is actually the right thing to do, but it's also good for business. American industry many times tries to create and innovate and, redo DEI to make it effective. But what if we used James' pre-imagined model to help us reimagine DEI in the industries that we seek to help?
Can you imagine? We could just
I can. Think about it.
appreciate the past and imagine, or rather reimagine, the future.
So appreciate the past and imagine or pre-imagine the future.